nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal.
This November is about a lot more than just who wins the Oval Office. Now, that's important, don't get me wrong, but control of the Senate is important. Control of the House, or maybe even Republicans expanding their majority in the House, is important. Also, getting governors elected for the Republican Party is incredibly important. All the way down the ticket, everyone is hoping to secure a victory this November, and whoever is at the top of that ticket, it has an effect on all of those races. And if you think that switching out Joe Biden for Kamala Harris is going to help Democrats who are running for Senate or House or other races, I think you're wrong. Because look at this devastating ad that just got released by the Republican nominee for Senate in Pennsylvania.
Kamala Harris is inspiring and very capable. The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
The nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes.
What is the solution for voters in the fossil fuel industry?
Giving the workers an ability to transition. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented cross borders criminals. That's correct.
Raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross the border without documentation.
Abolish ICE.
Yeah. Is that a position you agree with?
And we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Outdated. It is wrong-headed thinking to think that the only way you're going to get communities to be safe is to put more police officers on the street.
Would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
The food pyramid. What people
yes. Yes.
To reduce red meat specifically.
Yes.
People who are convicted in prison, like the Boston Marathon bomber, on death row, people who are convicted of sexual assault, they should be able to vote.
I think we should have that conversation.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it.
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
I am opposed to any policy that would deny any human being public health, period.
The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
We did it, Joe.
That's absolutely a nuclear bomb. It's devastating. There's no survivors after that. That's Dave McCormick running for Senate for the Republican Party against Bob Casey. And it began and ended with Bob Casey, the Democrat, who likes to call himself a moderate. In fact, didn't he pretend? Does he still pretend to be pro-life? I think he does. I don't know how you keep voting for this party and pretend to be a protector of unborn children. That's Bob Casey endorsing Kamala Harris there at the beginning and the end of that ad. That's going to leave a mark. And just replace out McCormick at the end here with every other Republican running for Senate right now across the country. No matter how many rallies they try to throw together, and no matter how they try to sugarcoat who Kamala Harris is and try to make her into an icon instead of an actual politician who has policies and a record, they're going to have trouble. They can't deny the fact that every single one of those clips you just saw are not from when she was vice president. Those are all when she was running for president 4 years ago. A campaign that was so disastrous that she had to pull out and cancel it before the voters actually had a chance to say how much they hated her. And now they're trying to push her on the American people, despite the fact that voters have never actually said, oh yeah, I'm with her. I'm with Kamala. They are so cynically going about this process with the one sort of philosophical perspective that they have, that which is people will vote for anybody but Donald Trump. They hate Trump so much that they're dying to pick anybody. And so let's just throw Kamala out there. Why not? After all, she's a historic figure. She's a black woman. Now, this is exactly what they did with Joe Biden, by the way, in 2020. But at the very least, Joe Biden could pretend that he was a moderate, right? But he governed in a way that was completely antithetical to the way he attempted to be a senator for 50 years.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
It's so beautiful that Democrats do this, the liberals do this, a mandatory buyback program. We need to have a buyback program for guns. You know, we'll buy your gun back from you, which is kind of funny. You know, think about the words being used there. We want to get rid of guns. We want to get guns off the street. So we'll have a buyback program. Buy back suggests that the original purchase was made from the American citizen who owns the gun, that they purchased it from the government, right? Buyback. Hey, the government's going to buy that gun back. No, no, no. If it's really a buyback program, then the store who sold it to you would be buying it back. But they want to use these words buy back to sort of cloud reality and lie. But so we're not going to confiscate guns. We're going to have a buyback program. Oh, well, what if I don't want to sell my gun to you? Oh, no, no, no. It's a mandatory buyback program. A mandatory buyback program. George Orwell would not even try to put this past his editor. His editor was like, oh, come on. No one's going to believe that crap. It's not gun confiscation, everybody. It's a mandatory buyback program. Well, what if I don't want to sell it? No, no, no. It's mandatory. You have no choice. You must give us your gun. But it's not confiscation. It's a mandatory buyback program. That's who Kamala Harris is. But the media is going overtime. If you watch the show on a regular basis, you know that I told you several weeks ago, if not a couple of months ago, that I predicted this will happen. Now, at the time, to be fair, I thought that Joe Biden was going to resign the presidency. Then Kamala Harris would become the incumbent president, and it would be very challenging to run against the first historic Black woman president. Now, little did I know that Joe Biden would be so obstinate and so stubborn and so narcissistic that he would refuse to actually resign the presidency, although that could still happen between now and Election Day. But instead, the historic Black woman running for president is still the media narrative that is exploding right now. There was a time, I think it was Peter Hassan, the editor of Free Beacon. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. He took a screenshot of the top 6 stories of the New York Times late yesterday afternoon, and all of them were like beyond glowing of Kamala Harris puff pieces. It's almost like the media doesn't have anything else to cover right now. I mean, maybe it's me, but I would think the fact that the White House and Democrat leadership, including Kamala Harris, have been covering up the truth about Joe Biden's health for the last 3.5 years is a story worth investigating. But the media is not really interested in that. I would think that perhaps the failures of the Secret Service on the assassination attempt of Donald Trump and all of the questions that still demand answers and what appears to be at the very least, a lack of transparency, if not a full-blown cover-up of the Secret Service's behavior the day of that assassination attempt. I would think, as a young journalist looking to make my name, that I would start pulling threads on that story. But nope, the media doesn't seem very interested in that story either. No, no, no. They're spending most of their time promoting Kamala Harris and elevating her up like our new Obama. She's Obama in a dress, which, by the way, based on some of the stories you'll learn about Barack Obama, that might not be a really big breaking story. I mean, for all we know, Obama in a dress was actually Obama in a dress. That said, look at this latest lie. Axios this morning put out an article. I kid you not. Here's the tweet that came with it. The Trump campaign and Republicans have tagged Harris repeatedly with the border czar title, which she never actually had. So you click on this article, and there it is. In the past few days, the Trump campaign and Republicans have tagged Harris repeatedly with the border czar title, which she never actually had. The headline here is Harris Border Confusion Haunts Her New Campaign. It's written by Steph Kite over there at Axios. Axios is very well respected inside the Beltway. Oh, they're so smart, those Axios people. But what's interesting is Axios put out this article back in March of 2021. And the headline is Biden puts Harris in charge of border crisis. So explain to me how Axios in March of 21 has a headline that says Biden puts Harris in charge of border crisis. And then today they have an article that says Harris border confusion haunts her. And in the article, it says that Republicans have tagged Harris with the border czar title, which she never had. We should really talk to this writer today, Steph Kite, and remind her that back in March of 2021, her own publication had this headline that proves that Biden made Harris the border czar. Now, this article was written by... This article was also written by Steph Kite. No, I kid you not. Let me zoom in. The byline on the March of 2021 article at Axios detailing How Joe Biden just made Kamala Harris the border czar is written by Steph Kite. And today's article accusing Republicans of lying about whether Kamala Harris was the border czar or not is written by Steph Kite. That's what the media is doing right now. That's, I mean, you can't make it up. I wish I could make it up. In fact, here's the video of Joe Biden in March tapping. I mean, why do we even need to go through this escapade? Everybody knows Kamala Harris was in charge of the border. Remember when she went to Guatemala and said, do not come, do not come. Even though when she was running for president, she said it's outrageous that these poor, desperate people aren't being welcomed into our country. She sat down with Lester Holt, and Lester Holt said, so you're going to go to the border? And she said, well, I've been to the border. Or no, she says, yeah, we'll go to the border eventually. And he said, well, you are in charge of border policy. And she goes, yeah. But, I haven't been to Europe either. Remember that? Why do we even have to do this? Why do I have to go through this process to prove that she's the border czar when everybody knows she's the border czar? I'll tell you why. Because the media lies to you. And they're lying right now. And they're trying to rewrite history. And you should turn them off and stop watching them. Let me watch them for you so I can tell you how bad they are. And so you can see through their lies. Here it is, Joe Biden, March 2021.
I've asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle.
By the way, she's the most qualified person to do this. Kamala Harris, the four-year senator from California and the former attorney general of California, who never dealt with anything outside the borders of this country, let alone the southern border of this country. Kamala Harris is the most qualified person to go to Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Mexico to figure out why people are coming here illegally. Just a little walk down memory lane about how awful this White House was from beginning to end. Not just recently. I do love the touch of the face masks, by the way.
Is that help? We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
Yeah, and she did a hell of a job, didn't she? She did great. But they're acting like it never happened. And unless we're here to remind you that it happened, they will get away with these lies. Watch this from CNN.
This is the kind of thing that is playing out all over conservative media. I just want to do a little bit of record correcting. There's not record crime right now. Number one, Harris was put in charge, as you said earlier, of combating the roots of immigration. She was not and is not the border czar.
And the Biden administration did task Vice President Kamala Harris with the issue of migrant crossings, naming her the so-called border czar.
I've asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
We've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
The point is, she is the border czar. She's been the border czar. The fact that they're desperately trying to lie about it right now proves one very important thing. They are terrified of this issue. And they're already trying to rewrite history, lie to your face, and distance themselves from what is clearly one of the most vulnerable, if not the most vulnerable aspect of Kamala Harris as the Democrat nominee for president. You think of one symbolic disaster of the Biden administration and the Biden presidency of the last 3.5 years, and nothing tells the story about how hapless and weak and incompetent they are, not to mention how corrupt and criminal they are, than the border. The border is it. Whether it's the root cause of immigration or illegal immigration, or it's just the fundamentals of securing the border, nothing tells you, or by the way, the resulting violent crime in our streets right now as a result of the unvetted, unmitigated disaster of border security and people coming in here without knowing who the hell they are. Nothing exemplifies it as much as this border, and she was in charge. She was put in charge. It's her disaster. And that's why they're trying to lie to you. That's why they're trying to rewrite history. And Dana Bash, I'm sorry, should be ashamed of herself.
The kind of thing that is playing out all over conservative media. I just want to do a little bit of record correcting. There's not record crime right now, number one.
I do love it when they fact check, by the way. I just want to do some record correcting. Where was Dana Bash record correcting when Joe Biden at that debate to her face said, no member of the military has died on my watch? But I'm glad that Dana Bash is Johnny on the spot now. And what was this last one, Dana?
Harris was put in charge, as you said earlier, of combating the roots of immigration. She was not and is not, the borders are.
There you go. She is not and was not, the borders are. Well, listen, we're glad that you're here because we will cut through this crap and we'll deliver the truth to you. Don't trust cable news from this point forward. Just watch it if you want entertainment, honestly.